This is the lost book on psychic energy. Hold on, I forgot my headphones. Crystal energy, treasure dowsing, and psychic sensitives. This book was originally written in 1846, based upon scientific research started in 1841. It is a scientific book that proved the concept of vital force. It proves scientifically that vital force is directional and that certain directions are positive for humans and other directions are not positive for humans. At the same time, Karl von Reichenbach accidentally proved scientifically the existence of psychics, sensitives, telepathy, and clairvoyance. He proved scientifically that magnetized water improves health. He proved scientifically and experimentally how and why water dowsing works. He proved scientifically that mesmerism is a valid psychological tool to train psychics. He scientifically proven the sun and moon affect humans, and humans who are sensitive can notice and use that knowledge. (2012) Dr. John Latourette, warriorpublications@gmail.com. Phone number. All right, so this is the work of Baron Dr. Karl von Reichenbach. Reichenbach was educated at the University of Tübingen, where he obtained the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. Directing his attention to the application of science to the industrial arts, he established the first modern metallurgical company with forges of his own in Villingen and Hausach in the Black Forest region of southern Germany and later in Baden. From 1830 to 1834, he investigated complex products of the distillation of organic substances such as coal and wood tar, discovering a number of valuable hydrocarbon compounds including creosote, paraffin, eupion, and phenol, antiseptics, pitacol, and sidrere, synthetic dyestuffs, picamar, a perfume base, asamar, capnomar, and others. Reichenbach included the mixture of hydrocarbon oils now known as waxy paraffin or coal oils. In 1839, von Reichenbach retired from industry and entered upon an investigation of the pathology of the human nervous system. He studied neurasthenia, somnambulism, hysteria, and phobia, crediting reports that these conditions were affected by the moon. After interviewing many patients, he ruled out many causes and cures, but concluded that such maladies tended to affect people whose sensory faculties were unusually vivid. These he termed sensitives. Influenced by the works of Franz Anton Mesmer, he hypothesized that the condition could be affected by environmental electromagnetism, but finally his investigations led him to propose a new imponderable force allied to magnetism, which he thought was an emanation from most substances, a kind of life principle which permeates and connects all living things. To this vitalist manifestation, he gave the name Aortic Force, or Odic. Reichenbach expanded on the work of previous scientists, such as Galileo Galilei, who believed the Earth's axis was magnetically connected to a universal central force in space, in conclusion that Earth's magnetism comes from magnetic iron, which can be found in meteorites. His reasoning was that meteorites and planets are the same, and no matter the size of the meteorite, polar existence can be found in the object. This was deemed conclusive by the scientific community in the 19th century. This work contains a minute detail of the researches and experiments made by Baron von Reichenbach for the purpose of establishing his discovery of the existence of an influence id nature analogous to, but essentially distinct from, the known imponderables, heat, electricity, and magnetism. This principle, denominated odial by the author, is characterized by the effects which it produces on the senses of touch, the feelings, emotions, the pressures, proprioceptives, and of sight and smell, in exciting peculiar sensations in the human frame, and in exhibiting luminous emanations issuing from the poles and sides of magnets, the Odic Force. In 1839, scientist Karl von Reichenbach retired from industry and entered upon an investigation of the pathology of the human nervous system. He studied neurasthenia, somnambulism. This is repeating. All right. Edgar Cayce takes the moon, for instance. Its influence is obvious on such things as the tides and the female cycle. These influences are observable when the moon is close. The word lunatic stems from luna, meaning moon. In law enforcement and emergency circles, accounts of the effect a full moon has on the crime rate has been reported. The planets are farther away than the moon, and the stars are far beyond them, but their light comes to the earth, and they influence in some way the heart or the brain or the emotions. Influenced by the works of Franz Anton Mesmer, he hypothesized that the condition could be affected by environmental electromagnetism, but finally his investigations led him to propose a new imponderable force allied to magnetism, which he thought was an emanation from most substances, a kind of life principle, which permeates and connects all living things. To the vitalist manifestation he gave the name Odic Force. The Odic Force, also called Odial, Odes, Odilic, or Odems, is the name given in the mid-19th century to vital energy, or life force, by Baron Karl von Reichenbach. Von Reichenbach coined the name from that of the Norse god Odin in 1845 after having scientifically studied it for 4 years. As von Reichenbach was investigating the manner in which the human nervous system could be affected by various substances, he conceived the existence of a new force allied to electricity, magnetism, and heat, a force which he thought was radiated by most substances and to the influence of which different persons are variously sensitive. He proponents I see what happened. He said that it is visible in total darkness as colored auras surrounding living things, crystals and magnets, but that viewing it requires hours first spent in total darkness, and only very sensitive people have the ability to see it. It has now been determined that many people in an alpha brain wave state or a waking theta state can also perceive it. They also said that it resembles the Eastern concepts, prana and ki. However, they regarded the Odic force not as associated with breath, like India's prana, and the ki, chi, of Eastern martial arts, but rather mainly with biological electromagnetic fields. Actually, there are now known to be at least 9 different energy fields inside the human body that are physical, electrical, magnetic, and esoteric. Those 9 different systems are the meridians, the chakras, the aura, the Celtic weave, the basic grid, the triple warmer, the strange flows, also called radiant circuits, psychic circuits, and the electrical system. Von Reichenbach did not tie Odic forces into other vitalist theories. Baron von Reichenbach expounded the concept of Odic force in detail in a book-length article, Researches on Magnetism, Electricity, Heat, and Light and the Relations to Vital Forces, which appeared in a special issue of a respected scientific journal, Annalen de Chimie und Physik. He said that the Odic force had a positive and negative flux, and a light and dark side. Individuals could forcefully emanate it, particularly from the hands, mouth, and forehead. Odic forces had many possible applications. The Odic force was conjectured to explain the phenomenon of hypnotism. In Britain, an impetus was given to this view of the subject following the translation of Reichenbach's researches by a professor of chemistry at the University of Edinburgh. These later researches tried to show many of the Odic phenomena to be of the same nature as those described previously by Franz Mesmer, and even long before Mesmer's time, by Swedenborg. The French scientists, Hippolyte Baraduc and Albert de Rocas, were influenced by the Odic force. Von Reichenbach hoped to develop a scientific proof for a universal life force. However, his experiments relied on perceptions reported by individuals claimed to be sensitive. As he himself could not observe any of the reported phenomena, the sensitives had to work in total or near total darkness to be able to observe the phenomena. Reichenbach stated that through experimentation, possibly 1/3 of the population could view the phenomena, but far less otherwise. Many scientists had abandoned concepts like the Odic force until the last 45 years. Now, through the scientific studies of energy medicine, Qigong, pranic healing, etc., many are starting to again use those concepts because they are verifiable. In Western popular culture, the name is used similarly to Ki or prana in reference to spiritual energies or vital force associated with living things. In Europe, Odic force has been mentioned in books on dowsing, for example. The author institutes a minute comparison of the new influence, Odiel, with the known influences or imponderables, heat, electricity, and magnetism proper, and establishes in a very beautiful and convincing manner both its great analogy to these and the striking differences which compel him to distinguish it from them, and which leave no choice for the present but that of giving it a distinct place and name, although future discoveries may possibly enable us to refer all the imponderables to a common force. But that time is still distant, and in every event a name will be required for the new group of distinct phenomena, just as we find it necessary to apply the names of magnetism and electricity to 2 such groups, the close relation and possibly common origin of which must be universally admitted. This book is very full, minute, and able development of the various forms, characters, and properties of the light given out by magnets of all kinds and visible in the dark to the sensitive. It may here be mentioned that the author now finds fully 1/3 of people in general to be more or less sensitive. This, as far as my own observations extend, I am inclined to consider as not exaggerated. The highest degrees of sensitiveness is comparatively rare, but is still common enough, even among the healthy. This, the light from magnets, is the only form of odilic light treated of in Part 2. The observations generally of the 50 new sensitives are first given. Then come, specially, the forms of the light, such as glow, flames, fibrous downy light, scintillations, and luminous nebulas, vapors, smoke, and clouds, to which is subjoined a most ingenious theory of the specters and demons of the Walpurgisnacht of the mountains of the Harz forest. Next we have the effects produced on it by different media, such as rarefied air, or the vacuum, water, and solid media. The colors of the odyllic light of magnets are then treated of, and the author demonstrates in it the presence of all the prismatic colors, very often in the form of a regular iris, with many other highly interesting details. The next investigates most successfully and with most beautiful results the remarkable effects produced on the light and its colors by the varied positions of the magnet and the magnetism of the earth. Lastly, he examines the effects of giving to the poles of magnets differently shaped terminations and of employing disc-shaped and spherical magnets. The results are singularly beautiful and interesting. As to the mode of investigation adopted by the author, it is the inductive method, the same to which we owe all the progress of modern science, and in which the conclusions are deduced from carefully observed phenomena, varied by experiments performed with due attention to accuracy. No other method is known by which natural phenomena, and especially obscure natural phenomena, can be investigated with any chance of success. The inductive method, usually called the scientific method, is the deductive method turned upside down. The deductive method starts with a few true statements, axioms, with the goal of proving many true statements, theorems, that logically follow from them. The inductive method starts with many observations of nature, with the goal of finding a few powerful statements about how nature works, laws, and theories. About 1600 AD, it became apparent to several people, Galileo Galilei in Italy, Francis Bacon in England, Tycho Brahe in Denmark, and others, that there were no subtle logical errors in Aristotle's use of the deductive method. The problem was that the deductive method, while widely successful in mathematics, did not fit well with scientific investigations of nature. Since 1600, the inductive method has been incredibly successful in investigating nature, surely far more successful than its originators could have imagined. The inductive method of investigation has become so entrenched in science that it is often referred to as the scientific method. This method has been most diligently, laboriously, and successfully applied by the author to a class of phenomena which might perhaps be considered at once more obscure and more interesting than those which form the objects of many other departments of science, if it could justly be said that the one part of nature is more interesting than another. I feel constrained to say that in the course of a life devoted to science, I have met with no researches in which the true and universally approved rules of investigation have been more perfectly adhered to and followed out than in those before us, which, were it necessary, might serve as a model to all experimental inquirers. The qualifications of the author, Baron Karl von Reichenbach, for such an inquiry are of the very highest kind. He possesses a thorough scientific education, combined with extensive knowledge. His life has been devoted to science and to its application to the practical purposes of mankind. He is known as a distinguished improver of the iron manufacture in his own native country, Austria. He is a thorough practical chemist, and by his well-known researches on tar, he has acquired a very high position. But in geology, physics, and mineralogy, he has been equally active. In particular, he is the highest living authority on the subject of meteorites and aerolites, of which remarkable bodies he possesses a magnificent collection. Of his knowledge on this subject, good use is made in this work. His sensitiveness, several of these people have been found since 1841, Edgar Casey, Donna Eden, Barbara Brennan, and many, many others, will no doubt facilitate his researches, but it will not add any new weight to the author's results, which, although observed in these very difficult circumstances, have been obtained in a manner which, as far as they extend, leaves nothing to be desired on this head. The essential point is to make sure of the competency and accuracy of the observer. Now, the sensitives of Baron von Reichenbach, a majority of whom are intelligent and educated persons, have observed the whole series of auroral phenomena, invisible to him, but most beautifully visible to them, as produced in his magnetic spheres. And he has had the double advantage, first, of producing, varying, and intensifying the phenomena at pleasure. Secondly, of cross-examining the observers with the phenomena actually under their eyes. There is one more point on which I would offer a few remarks. This is the bearing of the author's research on the subject of somnambulism and on that of mesmerism. It will be obvious to the attentive reader that the highest or extreme degree of sensitiveness to the new influence is found in spontaneous somnambulists, but not confined to the somnambulistic state. Somnambulism takes its place along with nervousness, spasms, catalepsy, as an introduction of a state of the systemic favorable to the development of sensitiveness, but not at all essential to it. Spontaneous somnambulism is a very frequent occurrence, so frequent indeed that it is only wonderful that there should ever have existed doubts as to the possibility of inducing it by artificial means. Now, anyone that wants to learn the skill need only go to someone that can train them to be conscious at alpha and theta brainwave. If you want such a home study course, let us know. We have them. La Tourette. This leads us to what is called Mesmeric State, which is merely somnambulism artificially produced. Its existence in this way is now generally, I may say, universally admitted, while yet, hitherto, we could not in any way account for the fact that one human being is able to produce this state in another, and that too without contact. Now, the author's discoveries show us that a force or influence analogous to heat, electricity, and magnetism, but distinct from all, exists in the human body, and that a large number of persons are more or less sensitive to this influence. Mesmer and others produced powerful effects by using magnets and other means, and this is now cleared up by the discovery that the new force residing in the human body does also reside not only in magnets, but in all other bodies. The conclusion naturally is that these forces are identical. There is a fluid or imponderable power or influence which is not ordinary magnetism, and which acts strongly on the system. Thus the crude observations of Mesmer and his followers, which were overlaid and discredited by their gratuitous and often absurd theories, are brought into a coherent physical shape, and the reader will find not only that they are reduced to purely physical causes, but that the contradictions, failures, inconsistencies, and confusion of the earlier mesmeric observations are also referred to their true physical origin. Even the mesmeric banquet ceases to be a mystery to us. In short, the author has shown that these most obscure natural phenomena, like all others, admit of being studied as a part of physical science, and that they will well repay the investigator. But the reader will observe that the author, preferring to begin at the beginning, has not, in these researches, studied the new phenomena on persons in the mesmeric state. The phenomena of mesmerism, or artificial somnambulism, are natural facts. Like all facts, they ought to be studied, and if hitherto the subject has presented results from which many recoil, it should be borne in mind that men of science have, in general, refused to investigate it, and that the only way to obtain true and valuable results is to apply to these phenomena the method I have endeavored above to illustrate, as the author has done, to a closely allied class of phenomena. The close connection between the two classes of facts may be easily illustrated. Everyone knows that one of the statements most frequently made by persons in the mesmeric or sleepwalking state is this, that they see flames issuing from the points of the operator's fingers. Nay, some are reported to have seen this when in the ordinary waking state, natural sensitives. These statements have been ridiculed and decreed as absurd, and denounced as willfully false. But these denunciations have been fulminated without a shadow of proof. And now these researches prove that a large proportion of mankind possess the power of seeing these flames, or energies. The mesmeric fact, therefore, is confirmed and established by the author's observations on persons not in the mesmeric state. We can as little explain gravitation as we can magnetic attraction. Our nightly sleep we can explain as little as we can the mesmeric sleep, but we can study both and determine the laws which regulate them, and it is our duty to do this, to the best of our abilities, in the latter case as well in the former. Nor is it possible for us to declare a priori what things are possible and what are impossible, in any case short of mathematical impossibility. That there is something worthy of research in these phenomena, all who have either personally studied them or carefully read the existing evidence admit the best security against fraud is the utmost possible knowledge of the subject, which can only be obtained by men of scientific training and turn of mind devoting their energies to it. If there be any phenomena which in a certain sense we might be entitled to call incredible, they are those of clairvoyance. The term clairvoyance, from French, clair, meaning clear, and voyance, meaning vision, is used to refer to the ability to gain information about an object, person, location, or physical event through means other than the known human senses, a form of extrasensory perception. A person said to have the ability of clairvoyance is referred to as a clairvoyant, one who sees clearly. Within parapsychology, clairvoyance is used exclusively to refer to the transfer of information that is both contemporary to and hidden from the clairvoyant. It is very different from telepathy in that the information is said to be gained directly from an external physical source, rather than being transferred from the mind of one individual to another. We must carefully distinguish between the facts themselves and the various, often absurd explanations and theories which unscientific observers seem to think it necessary to devise and insist on giving, while others, before admitting the facts, require them to be explained as if the truth of a fact depended on our being able to account for it. There are facts of the most interesting kind connected with this part of the subject, and we need not doubt that, if studied in the right spirit, these facts will one day admit of a natural physical explanation, as far at least as any natural fact can be explained. The example, indeed, above given, of the flames at the point of the fingers, proves that there is a physical cause for some, as we shall sooner or later find there is for all, of the mesmeric phenomena. But further, even clairvoyance has not unfrequently, as we know from the best authority, occurred, just as somnambulism and cataleptic rigidity have done, spontaneously, without the use of any mesmerizing process whatever. It is therefore independently of mesmerism, a fact to be investigated according to the usual rules of science. The remote viewing tests done at SRI 1971, following the protocols of Ingo Swann and at Monroe Institute, and by the Silva research teams, have verified this thousands of times. There are processes that anyone can learn if they are of average intelligence or higher, and if they are not skeptical, we do have a home study course on it. La Tourette. To return to the author's experiments, he has, by the minutest instructions, put it in the power of everyone to repeat them. It is hardly necessary to point out that in repeating them, if we wish to obtain or to control his results, we must strictly attend to the conditions. Indeed, this is so obviously necessary that I should not have alluded to it, had not the proceedings of certain physicians in Vienna and what they intended for an experimental refutation of the author's conclusions furnished evidence that even educated men, who might be supposed to be acquainted with science, may in the grossest manner violate this essential and simple rule. I have now to add that I have myself repeated some of the author's experiments, and have found, as was to be expected, that his account of the phenomena was perfectly accurate. There is no difficulty in finding sensitive subjects, but it is not so easy to make good and trustworthy observations when we have found them. I have reason to know that many persons have made similar observations in confirmation of those of the author. One gentleman, well known as the lover of science, has favored me with some of his. Those who have thus had an opportunity, or who may hereafter have an opportunity, of thus confirming, illustrating, or correcting the observations of the author, will confer on me a very great obligation by privately communicating to me the results they have obtained or may obtain, which, or a selection of which, with their permission, I should wish to add to the future part of this work. But it will be still more desirable that such observers should publish their results separately. Finally, with regard to the translation, I have endeavored in every case to adhere rigidly to the meaning of the author, even where, from the peculiarity of the German idiom, or of the author's characteristic style, which is not always easily rendered, it has been necessary, and this has often been the case, totally to change the form of the sentence. It has been my endeavor to produce a readable English work, as far as the nature of the subject and the very frequent occurrence of technical terms and of necessary repetitions of nearly identical details would permit. William Gregory, April 1850. Action of magnets, crystals, etc. on the human frame. Researchers of Reichenbach. His audio is identical with the mesmeric fluid of Mesmer, or with the influence which causes the mesmeric phenomena. Odilio, or mesmeric light, aurora borealis, artificially produced, mesmerized water, useful applications of mesmerism, physiological, therapeutical, etc., treatment of insanity, magic, divination, witchcraft, explained by mesmerism and traced to natural causes, apparitions. Second sight is waking clairvoyance predictions of various kinds. Here I shall proceed to mention in a very general way the action on the human system of inanimate objects such as magnets, crystals. It is the less necessary to dwell at length on this subject, as Baron von Reichenbach's researches on mesmerism, a translation of which I published, in so far as they have appeared in Germany, in the month of May 1850, having previously given, in 1846, an abstract of Part 1, contains the results of the only truly scientific investigation which has yet been made on that point. It is true that we only possess at present a part of these admirable researches, which were continued with great labor and astonishing perseverance for 5 years. The Baron, during that time, collected full materials for a work on the numerous branches of the subject investigated by him, but he has not, as yet, been able to publish more than a part, sufficient, however, to make us eager to obtain the remainder. The labor and time required for arranging and publishing the details of so many investigations made upwards of 100 different persons is very great, and the remainder of the work can only appear gradually as it is brought into a state fit for publication. In a former chapter, however, we have a general summary of the whole investigation, and it is to that we must refer for the facts which have been ascertained on this matter. Mesmer observed the effects not only of magnets, but of other things on the human body, but he seems to have been, and his followers certainly were, in too great a hurry to apply the power he observed to profitable purposes, and to the cure of disease, so that they made no thorough or scientific examination of it, and the whole subject fell into discredit. Nevertheless, now it appears that the fundamental facts are true. Magnets do act on the human body. When passes are made with them, the same sensations are experienced as when the operator uses his hand. Here, no doubt, the influences of the hand is combined with that of the magnet, but by using the magnet without the hand of the operator, or in the hand of a person whose hand, by itself, has no perceptible effect, it is ascertained that the magnet does not exert an influence identical with that exerted by the human body. This influence may go so far as to produce, even at a great distance, unconsciousness, as well as the true mesmeric sleep, and in highly susceptible cases, even cataleptic rigidity and convulsion. In some such case, mentioned by Reichenbach, a large magnet being disarmed at the greatest distance permitted by the room, instantly struck the patient into complete rigidity and unconsciousness. But Reichenbach had also shown that a large number of perfectly healthy persons are sensitive to the influence from the magnet. The sensitiveness is not a morbid condition, and is found in different degrees in 1 person out of 3 on an average of healthy and diseased people. This influence is conducted or passes through all matter, differing in this form the electrical influence, which cannot pass, for example, through glass or resin, but passes easily through metals. Like electricity and ordinary mesmerism, it is polar in its distribution. In the magnet, this influence, which Reichenbach has named Odic, is associated with ferromesmerism, that power by which the suspended needle points to the earth, and by which the magnet attracts iron fillings. But it is found, as we shall see, unconnected with ferromesmerism, as in crystals or in the human body. But wherever it appears, that is, whether in mesmerism, in crystals, or in the human body, it is polar, like ferromesmerism. That is, there is a difference in its manifestations at the two ends or poles of the magnets or other body possessing it. It occurs also in amorphous matter without distinct polarity. The Odilic influence is characterized in its flow out of one body towards all others, for like heat, light, and electricity is sent forth in all directions, by its emanations being luminous, that is, to sensitive persons in the dark. The light is very faint, so as generally to be overpowered by the faintest glimmer of ordinary light, although very sensitive persons are most persons when in the mesmeric sleep, and most persons when in mesmeric sleep can see it in daylight. It presents the rainbow colors, but at the northward pole of magnets, the blue, at the southward, the red, predominates. For a multitude of very interesting details on the Odilic light of magnets, I refer to the work of Reichenbach already mentioned above. Not only is the Odilic influence found in magnets, but also in crystals, all bodies. When indistinct and large crystals possess it and exhibit to the sensitive the same or analogous luminous emanations, often of great beauty. Crystals are also Odilically polar and produce, though less powerfully, the same effect as magnets or as the human hand. Most people are not aware that all ligaments, tendons, bones, and other body parts are composed of crystalline structures, la tourette. The human body is found to possess the same influence and to produce the same effects on the sensitive as magnets do. I have already spoken of the light seen by persons in the mesmeric sleep to issue from the tips of the operator's fingers. This is Odilic light, which is seen by the sensitive, at least in the dark, without their being in mesmeric sleep. Notice the direction of energy flows from current scientific research. The hands are oppositely polar, and the head, eyes, and mouth are also foci where the Odilic influence appears to be concentrated. This is the reason why passes with the hands and gazing are the most powerful means of mesmerizing. Besides the sources of Odio above mentioned, Reichenbach has shown that it is present in all material substances, though generally in a less degree than in magnets or crystals. He has found it to be developed by heat, light, electricity, common or galvanic friction, and every species of chemical action, such as combustion, the solution of a metal or of an alkali in an acid, respiration, and the changes going on in the animal body generally. This explains why the human or animal body is so plentiful a source of odium. He has also found it in plants, and has detected its presence in the light of the sun, moon, and stars, the earth. Many very sensitive persons cannot sleep unless their bed lies in a place parallel to the mesmeric meridian, with the head towards the north. I have had opportunities of seeing several and hearing of many more persons who experience this, and many of them had observed it without being able to account for it, long before Reichenbach's experiments were made. It appears extremely probable that some diseases may be more easily cured when this position of the bed is observed. To some patients, the position at right angles to it is quite intolerable, and this has been noticed long ago, but ascribed to fancy or idiosyncrasy alone. It is found that people are more readily mesmerized when they sit, with the head towards the north, the face turned, and the feet extended towards the south, than in any other position. I have myself repeatedly experienced this, and probably, if observed, it will be found to be a general fact, although many are easily enough mesmerized in any position. All three, Besant, Leadbeater, and Babbitt, had micro-clairvoyant psychic abilities and did all of Reichenbach's, as did all of Reichenbach's sensitives. Reichenbach had also found that to see the Odilic light, for example, best, the subject should be in north and south position, with the head toward the north. Reichenbach had also observed many very curious facts concerning the distribution of the mesmeric or Odilic influence in the body at different hours, and before or after meals. On awakening in the morning, or rather with sunrise, it began to rise, sinks a little before breakfast from this effect of hunger, then rises steadily, with a sudden increase at dinner time, continuing to rise till the evening, or after sunset, when it begins to fall, and falls during the night, till before sunrise it is at the lowest ebb. For many curious and interesting details on this point, and for the application of these facts to the due regulation of our mode of life, with a view to the preservation of health, I refer to the work of Reichenbach, so often mentioned. In all these researches, Odile appeared to be polar, and the negative and positive northward or southward poles of any object possessing the Odilic force, such as a magnet, a crystal, the human body, of which the hands are the chief poles, always produced peculiar effects. The negative or northward pole caused a great coolness and gave out light in which blue predominated. The sensation caused by the positive or southward pole was a disagreeable warmth, and in its light red prevailed. The right hand is negative and cool, the left positive and warm. The sun's rays are negative and cause to sensitives a strong but delightful coolness. A hot stove caused to the very sensitive, until they came so near as to be affected by the radiant heat, a cold feeling amounting to that of frost due to its negative odilic emanations. And in some, the numerous tapers, candles in a Roman Catholic church cause not only cold, but fainting. The moon, on the contrary, is odilically positive, and her rays excite a feeling of warmth in the sensitive. All the planets, which, like the moon, shine by reflected light, are, like her, odilically positive. In short, Odile is universally diffused throughout the material universe, and in this respect it agrees with heat, light, and electricity. By a laborious and beautiful investigation, Reichenbach has, in my opinion, demonstrated this existence of a force, influence, or imponderable fluid, whatever name be given to it, which is distinct from all the known forces, influences, or imponderable fluids, such as heat, light, electricity, mesmerism, and from the attractions, such as gravitation or chemical attraction. But it is highly analogous to the other imponderables, and as we have seen, is found associated with them. All of them may possibly be hereafter reduced to one primary force, but in the meantime, Odile must be distinguished from the rest, just as heat, light, and electricity are from each other. Although Reichenbach has not made his experiments with artificially mesmerized persons, nor of those persons in the mesmeric sleep, or the state of artificial somnambulism. Yet he has observed that persons who are subject to spontaneous somnambulism are almost always very sensitive when in their ordinary state, and that when they fall into somnambulism, their sensitiveness is greatly increased. Now we know that persons in artificial somnambulism or mesmeric sleep are also highly sensitive, so that they see the odilic light from the hand or from other objects even in daylight. Hence it is hardly to be doubted that the odilic influence which exists in magnets and in the hand, and which in magnets produces the sensations formerly described, and even the mesmeric sleep, is identical with the mesmeric influence on the hand, which is usually employed to produce the effects of mesmerism. Thus, when Mesmer spoke of an influence from magnets and of a mesmeric fluid as producing these effects, he was right, insofar at least as the existence of the influence is concerned, which is not a fluid, inasmuch entitled to the name as the electric fluid, but he was wrong in supposing it to be identical with ferromagnetism, with which it is only associated. The magnetic baquet was merely a mixture of all sorts of things, which, giving rise to a slow chemical action, furnished a slow but constant current of odilic or mesmeric influence.